shit, like something like F or something. I'm enlightened, I think, or something. And I thought it was the cutest thing ever. Like, and I'm like, oh, maybe we all are going on that path, So
Yeah.
what was it? What was that? How meditation played in that journey? What
Yeah. Well,
was?
it's everything. It's everything as far as my journey is concerned. But I'm writing a book right now, and it's called Holy Shit, I Think I'm Enlightened. And it's
Oh yeah,
basically
that's what it was.
2/3 of the way through. But it's basically my journey of like being a mass spiritual believer that just was in search for stress relief, like I've laid
Right.
out, right? But then after I came back and I had that enlightening experience, things were really good for a while. Like for
Mm-hmm.
probably like 4 months, I was like, oh, I'm like so much happier now. I feel lighter. The work feels
Yeah.
lighter. And I'm like going along really well. But then all of a sudden, it started to feel like it wasn't real. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was getting further and further away from me because I did not have that feeling. I'm like, I want that feeling to a point where like I
Right.
was starting to obsess about it. I'm like, how can I get this feeling back?
Yeah.
So I found this book. It was so strange how I found it. And like do you want me to tell you the story about the book?
Yes, please, because you and I could resonate a lot in these books because as you can see behind me, I have all these books
Yes.
that I already read and I got a whole bunch down there and upstairs that I still have to read. So I love it. I love stories when it comes to book because you get it's somehow the universe source, God, whatever. It's like, here, you want a message? Open this book,
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, please.
This was bizarre. So I'm at a particularly low day at work and I'm just like feeling depressed. And I'm like, this is
Right.
not good. Like I felt like before I was anxious and stressed. Then
Mm-hmm.
I went to the retreat and I felt like so happy and light. And now I'm depressed. Like I had never been depressed before. I was
Right.
overwhelmed by the work, but I wasn't sad. And I was
Right.
feeling sad. Like my heart was sad.
Mm.
So every Monday used to go to Trader Joe's and walk there because it's 1 block away from my building. And I buy salads and fruit for my lunches for the week because I rarely got to eat lunch at work.
Right.
So one Monday, I'm having a horrible morning and I go to Trader Joe's and there's this bookstore right next to it in the same shopping center. And it's called Unicorn Used Book. So I go into the
Mm.
bookstore and I asked the owner, we chatted for a bit and I'm like, I'm looking for like new age spirituality. And he's like, oh, this. So I go over, I spend an hour and I am scouring these books. And like I said, I knew the differentiation between thoughts and thinking, like some of the self-help stuff I had already
Yeah.
read and I'm picking things up and it was like same, like things that I read, different authors, but different, just tweaks here and there, but it was like nothing new.
Right.
And I'm like, why can't I find anything? And I am leaving and I look up and on the top shelf, I have the book here. I see this book. Like this book, it had no jacket cover. It's dirty.
Wow.
It's like
Yeah.
this brown book, tan book, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's so far away. I couldn't even see what the spine said because it has the
Right.
title. So I'm like, can you get this book down for me before I go? And he's like, yeah. And he gets the book down and it's by Jack Cornfield. Do you know him? Have you
No,
heard
I
of
haven't
him?
heard of
Oh, he's
him.
amazing. It's called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry. So I open
Mm.
and read to you what I read. It just blew my mind. So it says, we all know that after the honeymoon comes the marriage. After the election comes the hard task of governance. In spirituality, life is the same. After the ecstasy comes the laundry. Most spiritual accounts end with illumination or enlightenment. But what if we ask what happens after that? What happens when Zen masters return home to their spouse and children? What happens when the Christian mystic goes shopping? What is life like after the ecstasy? And how do we live our understanding with a full heart? And I was like, got goosebumps. I'm like,
No, no. I'm like, I have all this like energy, like all like coming behind me, and I have goosebumps, and I'm just like,
now you tell
wow,
me that I was
wow,
not meant to find this book. Like,
100%.
so I take this book home, I read it. I I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I am feeling, what I was feeling. So then I really started digging deep into what happens with energy because I knew something had to happen with energy
Mm-hmm.
because of the type of meditation. And I like really found out basically what happened to me is all of these like suppress, even like life stuff, all
Yeah,
of these
yeah.
emotions, all of this energy that was just pushed down, trap, like just,
Mm,
compiled from each other. All of that work that we were doing by just like loosening, feeling anything,
mm-hmm.
it was just loosening, and all of that negative garbage was just floating up and out. And
Wow.
that is what my dark night was. And I
Wow.
still even for months, my husband was like, you still touch your face full up when you sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care if I had to live with spiders every day the rest of my life to be as happy as I am right now. Have
You know,
found.
you're funny because that happens to me every so often. I could be in bed sleeping, and all of a sudden I feel like there's stuff walking all over me. And I'm just like, okay, what else do I need to release? And it's funny because that night, usually, I've noticed that I'll be waking up. Something wakes me up in the middle of the night, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And when it first started, I would go and I would start like journaling. I'll start writing stuff down,
Uh-huh.
or then I went into reading, like certain things, or I'll just sit there. Sometimes I'll just sit there and maybe meditate or maybe just stare at the ceiling. I don't know. It started very different for me. And then lately, I had that one experience with a book. Also, we had gone to Ohio to one of my husband's daughter's house because we were meeting our last granddaughter, Dream, and she had just turned 1. So that was her birthday weekend. And where we booked our Airbnb, I had no idea they had a holistic store. So I could go and get like sage and all that stuff because I like to have all kinds of stuff here in the house. And so I went and got my nails done the following day before the party. And I get out of the nail place and I said, you know what, let me walk over to the holistic store. And I walked in and I'm like looking at everything. I beautiful goddesses, like the statues, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had all this money so I could take all this home right now, because I just kept getting drawn to all this. And then all of a sudden I get my sage. They had like, I didn't know there were more than 1 or 2 different sages. There's like
Oh yeah.
thousands of them, I guess. So I brought home like, I guess 8 different ones. And then I got some Palo Santo, but they didn't have the big sticks. They only had like a little bit. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
that's fine. I'll take whatever's there. And then while the girl was looking to see if there were more Palo Santo in the back, I went to the bookshelf. They had like a nice bookshelf and there's a whole bunch of books. And I'm just like looking around and all of a sudden I feel something telling me, look up, look to your right, and the first book you see, grab it. It was kind of like that. So
Yeah.
when I did that, it was funny because where is here it is. I've been hearing about this goddess on and off on different podcasts, but I was never really like, oh, I'm going to look into her. It was more like, oh, okay, I'll look into it eventually. And then I get the book of Kuan Yin.
Oh, beautiful.
She is the goddess of wisdom, miracles, and compassion. And I was just like, oh God, okay. So,
Oh,
it's a
so
beautiful
lovely.
story. Yeah, it's very from, I think, China, Korea, Japan, and even India. She was in all those places. And it's just so funny because 3 times already, she's woken me up between 2 and 4 in the morning to read her book.
Wow.
I don't know why yet. I haven't really
That is
gotten too
so
much of it.
powerful. That is
Yeah.
so interesting. You know what? I want to say at least 3 times a week that
Mm,
I wake up between 3 and 3:30 in the morning. I am
mm,
wide awake and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this idea. And I will sit down and I will just write and write and write and write and write for like an hour and a half.
yeah.
And then I'm like, and I go back to bed and I go to sleep and I get up in the morning and like, I have no idea what I even wrote. And these things are just pouring out of me. Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
oh, it's just so lovely. And you know what? It's so fascinating that I've done so much reading and research about
Mm-hmm.
intuition because I was big on like, I'm like, how do I know if it's my ego, my intuition? And I know
Yeah.
that I have learned to follow my intuition so well because I really understand the difference in noticing the signs around me. First of all, like if
Yeah.
you just stop and like just take a beat and you just notice things, there are so many signs around you. And
There is.
it's just so crazy. And when you have a feeling of something that's like emotionally charged in any way, that is
Mm-hmm.
not your intuition. That is your ego. Your
Yeah.
intuition comes to you and it's just like, just do this. It's like it's a fact.
Yeah.